Welcome to the first of two videos that I hope will help students with using and developing the cascading style sheets or CSS styling for the case study called Pacific Trails Resort. You're looking at two pictures right now that you hopefully can see on the screen. The one from the first chapter where students simply coded the HTML documents for the home page called index and the one called yurts. And you see that one over on the left hand side of the screen with the various navigation links to the other pages, the bulleted list, etc. And then over on the right hand side we're going to apply some cascaded style to make the background of the title Pacific Trails Resorts black and have white letters on that black background, and we'll have a blue background with the links or the nav section, and we'll just have a different kind of effect with this page. And we'll do this by simply adding one document and some slight modifications to the web pages that are already developed by students. Now right off the bat, if you have checked the grade and the feedback that I've given you, I've asked each of you to clean up your previous case study first. Several of you insisted on doing it your own way. You left out some tags that didn't match up, or you actually forgot some stuff to put on there, and you'll have problems with future case studies as we build on Pacific Trails Resort if you choose not to make these corrections. And I will continue to deduct these because I want you to have a successful and less painful or less challenging experience with the future case studies. The other thing you have to remember, especially if you're members of what I call the exact words, very nervous about the A to where you can't learn kind of mindset, you want to understand that if you've got an old browser, an old version of Internet Explorer, an older version of Google Chrome, or if you're just using different browsers, sometimes there will be some differences in your case studies. That doesn't excuse the incorrect or correct work that I request, but you might try uploading your pages when you test them out on different browsers, and certainly consider updating the one you have. That's going to be to your advantage later on. So those are just reminders that you need to take care of that stuff. You're going to hear some various beeps and bounces as I go through this because I've got a lot of pages open, so I can make this as visual for students as I possibly can. If you look in your textbook, you will see a section, and you're going to see a lot of pages on my screen that won't match yours, and thank you for your patience as I go through these. In your textbook, you're going to see some directions and some illustrations. This is the result of the eventual assignment for this CSS styling of your web pages, and you'll notice that the color scheme is over to the side, the various shades of black and blue and gray, and they'll have code numbers because instead of trying to say light blue, dark blue, cadet blue, midnight blue, they'll basically have, in web page design, they will have some special what they call hexadecimal codes with it, starting with a hash or a pound or tic-tac-toe symbol, and then a series of numbers that are associated with it. And those are listed over on the left-hand column. If you are looking at these directions at the end of your chapter, you've got 5 tasks to perform. You're going to create a folder, which I mentioned before must be done if you want the web pages to successfully interact with each other. And in Blackboard, those have to be submitted as a zipped folder. It won't allow you to send it as just individual files. You'll create this external style sheet called pacific.css, which we'll do in just a few minutes, and then we'll update the individual pages that have already been created in the previous assignment. I want to make sure that you're looking at something called a wireframe, especially in this 210 course where you should have some background already. So this is review for you, and that's up in this corner where you might see up in the corner of your page the header section, the nav section, the content ID, the contact ID, and the footer, and those are basically set up for you. If we look at a copy of the original page that you did in chapter 2, you'll notice of course that the beginning of this must have this set of tags, and a couple of people left these out. You have to have these in this assignment or literally your case study will not work for you. So you cannot start with body. You've got to have this document type and an English language kind of setup in order for your external style sheet to work. Don't worry so much if your style sheet is something that you don't understand right now. It's sort of like learning a foreign language. you have to just have some practice with it and just get used to it, and all of a sudden the light will start going from a dark light to a glimmer to a flicker, and eventually the light will start shining as you get more into it. Notice again that in the wireframe set up for this web page, there's a header section at the top, and you'll have to excuse my left-handed writing here. There's a nav section. There's a section that, depending on the book, it might call main or it might call div. And the reason for these kinds of sections is you can take each individual part of your web page and you can design them individually by referring to these particular tags. And I want to mention to you, just to be sure you're clear on this, don't get confused with the word header, head, and heading. The head is at the very top of the page, and this is where the title of the web page shows up on the title bar. I'm not talking about the title Pacific Trails Resort, but the title that's on the bar every time you open a web page. You'll have the header, which is just the first section or first division of the page itself as far as design, and then the heading, H1, H2, those kind, are just the individual sizes for different titles that are on your page. Now in the main section we've got something, and sometimes students will get these confused. There's a content section, or the main section of the page after we get past the header, footer, and the links, and inside that one there'll be something called contact. Please be careful not to get content and contact mixed up as you're going through these directions. When you actually submit your folder to me, you will eventually have a page that is called Pacific, PACIFIC.CSS, and when you're saving this on your computer, be sure you put it directly in quotes, and it will override any file type that's there. And of course you'll have your index page, and you'll also have, in your example, you'll have the yurts page that will be sent. So all three of these will be inside of one folder. Alright, let's go in and let's look at the actual directions that are set up for designing the cascaded style sheet. It will seem a little weird at first, but once you get used to this, and even though you're in 210 and have had some experience with these style sheets, it may take a little while for a few of you to review. And then I've got a couple of brand new people who probably shouldn't have taken this class first, but if they can hang with it, I'm totally fine with their being in the class. Alright, we're looking in the book at task 1, which just says create the folder, and the folder already is created by you because you can use what you had from the last exercise of the case study and just add to it. We're going to work on task 2, which says the external style sheet, and you're going to look at creating, if you look at the directions, it says to create CSS files for the body element. You look at the bulleted list over here on the side. You're going to use something for the body element, for the header, for the nav, I'm looking at the bulleted list, for H2, for DT, the definition or description terms, and then a class named resort. So let's look at how we would actually design these on a computer. I would go into WordPad, and basically to set up the sheet, the first one is body. So I'm going to type the word body, and the way the syntax or structure is set up, you use an open curly brace. Now don't get the curly brace and the bracket mixed up. It does make a difference. It's not a bracket, and it's not a parenthesis. It's got to be the curly brace. It's very precise with this. And then you have a closing one that opens in a different direction. Now your book does it like this. I personally, this is just Mike Sis talking, I personally like to have them on the same line so I can keep up with the pairing so I don't leave one out. And that's just a Mike Sis thing. It's very free form. You can do this any way you like. There's no absolute rule as far as how they're spread out on the screen, as long as you've got the right punctuation syntax in there. Alright, it says to start out, and with the body element you want the background color to be white, which is the pound symbol and 6 letters F in a row. They can be lower or uppercase. I promise you it does not make a difference to the computer which one you use. And while you're on this part, you're not seeing what I'm seeing here, but I'm basically wanting to make sure I go with the correct solution so you can see this. So for body, I'm going to have one set up. I'll have one set up as it says for the header. Now again, don't get header and heading and head mixed up. So there'll be one for header. In the next one, there's one for nav. And I'm just setting these up. You can do this by any method you want to. This is just the teaching style I'm using to hopefully help students out. There's one for H2. And I'll show you something that the book put in there a little bit out of order that I disagree with in a second. I'm just going down the list right now, so hopefully this is not confusing anyone. For the description term, or DT, they have on here. And I'm setting up those braces. Thank you for your patience as I go through these videos. And then it mentions something called a class named resort. Now, if you look at your code that you did for the previous case study, there was no resort definition in here. We had nav and H2 and DT and header and all those, but we didn't have resort. So if we're going to make a new definition for a style, and we're calling this resort, I guess named after Pacific Trails Resort, we either have to have a period in front of it, which makes it a class, which we can use many times in a website, or web page rather, or it can be an ID, which has a pound symbol or a hashtag in front of it, and it can only be used once. So either I would have a period right there in front of it, or I would have the little tic-tac-toe or pound symbol. Because this one is a class always begins with a period. So I'll have period resort, and that period does make a difference, and we'll have the little opening and closing tags for those as well. I want to let you know right up front, I am not doing your entire assignment for you. So if you're looking for me to do your homework while you watch me and just copy it, that won't happen, because that will minimize your opportunity to learn something and to try it on your own. But I wanted to at least give you a guide with it. Again, back to the body, it says the background color, and the way we do background color, you can refer to this in your book and your exercises. It's background hyphen color followed by a colon. Again, the spacing is up to you right here. Pound symbol, and it can be lowercase f's or uppercase f's. It doesn't matter. And it's always followed by a semicolon. It says for the text color to be dark gray. Now you would think under normal circumstances I would write text color, but that's not the way CSS is set up. I wasn't on the committee that developed these words, so I have to live, and you have to live with what they say. Color is going to be gray. Now it'd be nice if I could put gray right there, but there are various shades of gray. So to be real specific with the book, they're giving you the code, pound symbol, and a bunch of sixes in a row, and even a semicolon. So that will be the code that you'll use for the body. So what that means is when we apply this particular style to the web page, it will have a background color that's white, and any text color that's not overridden is going to be a gray color. For the header, it's very similar. It says to use the background color, and it's going to be very similar. I think you get the idea right here. You would type in background color, and again, I'm just reading directions out of your book and putting in the information, and you can fill that in. Now if you're going very exact like I am right here, you're going to mess up. I'm just giving you the basic guidelines to get you started. So if you're putting underscores and being very exact words, you're going to make some mistakes. I'm not doing your entire program for you, but you get the idea of how these work. All of them are very similar to one another. Now when you get down to I'll go down to the one that says description tag, or DT. It says style for the DT element has a dark blue text color. Now it says text color right there, so the color is going to be just the word color, doesn't say background, and it gives you the information 0000033. You've got to have the exact syntax. The pound symbol's got to be there, and you may have noticed with your mistakes even on your previous submissions, if you had any, that the browser tries to render or show the web page anyway, but if there are any mistakes, it simply will just not do what you've told it to do. It won't do like a lot of programming languages where it says, hey, you made a mistake. Now just to make a point here to drive it home, you are perfectly welcome if you want to, but again, it's a matter of neatness more than anything else. You would be perfectly welcome to put everything on one line. But again, it's just a matter of readability. How do you want this to work out? So when we get down to the last one, we're going to do a class named resort. Now I mentioned if you want to do a class, you've got to do a period before you put the word resort rather. and it says in the directions, the last bullet point on the page, to configure medium dark blue text color, and they've given you a code right now, and that text color happens to be pound symbol, and again, it doesn't matter if it's lower or uppercase, it's perfectly fine. 5C 7F A3. I may go through this hexadecimal code and explain to you how that works sometimes, and because I'm referring to a text color, I've got to put the description right there, color followed by a colon. And this is the way you would set up your web page. Now what you would do is you would go to File and Save As, and you want the name of the web page in quotation marks to be the word Pacific.css. Everything goes inside the quotes. Please don't misspell it. I had a student several years ago who was vehemently argumentative with me, and she said I did everything perfectly. She typed the wrong letters, CSS. She made a misspelled word there, and that's what was causing her page not to work. So be very careful with your spelling when you're saving this page. Alright, once this page is saved, what you're going to do is apply this information to your actual web page's index and yours. Now one thing that happens on the very last page of the case study, and I'm not sure why they did it this way, but they're going to have another situation that's going to occur, and I'm not sure why they waited until the last minute to do this. What they did is they being the book, is they went to the very last page of the book and gave another set of instructions, and they said, oh, by the way, we're going to do a page, we're going to do a definition in the Cascade style sheet called H1, and I'm thinking, why did they not do that with the rest of the directions? But if you look on the next page where it says Task 5, Update the CSS, they're going to ask for a definition for the H1 element, and I'm thinking, why did they not do that earlier? I'm not sure why they would not do that, but you'll see that right in here. They'll give definitions for the H1 element, and again, I don't know why they didn't put that on a different page. So if we go back and take care of that one right now, where they've skipped around, and by the way, these items, body, header, all these, they can be put in any order that you like. There's not an absolute order where you have to put them. That's totally up to you. So H1 rather, which is one that they've defined on that last page, is asking for the bottom margin, and you just have to look in the book and see what the codes are. They want the bottom margin to be 0. A lot of times they'll tell you exactly what to type. Now something else that's going to happen later on as you get into further chapters, they're going to ask you to do 2 more styles besides the ones that we have in this Cascade style sheet. They're going to refer to something later on called a contact ID and one called a content ID. We'll not do these now, but just to let you know what will happen eventually, you'll have one, and again I use the word ID right here. You'll have one later on called contact and another one later on called content. You'll be coding this stuff in your web pages, but it will not actually be applied yet. But just to let you know, this is going to come up probably in the next chapter when you continue this case study. But this will give you a start on actually creating the page that is called Pacific.css. And again, just as a reminder, you want that to be in the same folder as the other 2 web pages. So you can take that same folder you had and just add that Pacific.css to that folder. In the next video, we'll actually go in and apply this style sheet to your index and your web pages. If you have any questions, please contact me.